Imagine waking up to sunrise over your vineyard and seeing your HOA president. Phone out like a trophy, smiling while the police march across your fields. What would you do if a HOA tried to strangle your family business over a petty grudge? 'Cause that's exactly what happened to me at dawn, with coffee still warm in my hand. My name's Marcus Thornfield. 3 years back, I walked away from a high-rise office in San Francisco, where I billed $400 an hour and wore suits worth more than most folks' rent. Then the marriage cratered. My ex chose my law partner, and the settlement cleaned me out faster than a Vegas slot. I packed up what pride I had left and moved into my grandfather's old farmhouse in Redwood Ridge, a valley where morning mist curls through grape rows like quiet prayers. Granddad planted this place in 1962, 40 acres of sweat, stubbornness, and Pinot dreams. He taught me as a kid that land remembers who loves it. The boards in the farmhouse still groan like arthritic knees. And my German Shepherd, Barrel, treats every delivery truck like a personal attack. But after 15 years of corporate knife fights, waking up to dew on grape leaves felt like rehab for the soul. Then came Karen. Picture this: a HOA president with a smile you can cut yourself on perfect blowout, white SUV that's never seen dirt, and a clipboard heavy with rules nobody asked for. Her name is Karen Whitfield, and she acts like God outsourced neighborhood management to her personal inbox. She's married to a developer named Preston Slicksuit. Slicker hair. Builds those beige McMansions that look copy-pasted from a catalog. It started with a fence. I replaced the rotted boards along my eastern boundary standard agricultural fencing to keep deer out and drunk wedding guests in. I'm elbow deep in post holes when a car door slams. Karen clicks toward me in heels that sink in the soil like little accusations. That fence violates our aesthetic guidelines, she announces. I lean on the shovel. Ma'am, this property's older than your subdivision by, about 6 decades. Rules are rules. Marcus, that word rules dripped out like cough syrup. This is a residential community now. We have standards. 2 days later, a certified letter lands in my mailbox like a grenade. Cease and desist. Claims my vineyard violates residential zoning. Threatens $500 a day until I restore neighborhood harmony. She CC'd the county inspector, my bank, and the local paper, subtle as a sledgehammer. What Karen didn't know, couldn't know, was that before I was a broke farmer, I was a real estate attorney. Agricultural properties have protections most HOAs only whisper about. I brewed a fresh pot, spread her letter on my kitchen table, and told Barrel, sorry, she just kicked the wrong beehive. I went rummaging through Granddad's ancient file cabinet, the one that smells like dust and tobacco ghosts, in a manila folder labeled Important Keep Forever. I found it the 1962 deed with perpetual farming rights, legal TNT, that tells future committees to take a long walk. I copied every page, drafted a response tight enough to make a law professor clap, and mailed it certified to everyone she tried to spook. When the county inspector Rodriguez showed up, he was polite and, actually knew the law. We walked the barn from 1965, the equipment shed from 1998, the old root cellar that's held more stories than wine. Everything's solid. Mr. Thornfield, he said, your agricultural exemption is ironclad. I watched Karen film the whole thing from her SUV, lips pressed thin as floss. That's when I realized this wasn't about a fence. It was a play, a push, a land grab dressed up in community standards. A week later, an emergency HOA meeting pops up. Agenda Beautification Standards, addressing agricultural eyesores impacting property values. I went. The community center smelled like carpet cleaner and middle-class anxiety. Karen sat at the front table under fluorescent lights, like a queen under bad theater bulbs. She ran a slide deck about maintaining neighborhood character and paraded a petition about property value concerns over my commercial operation. The way she said commercial made it sound like I brewed meth, not Merlot. Then, something beautiful happened. Mrs. Patterson, a retired teacher with a spine of steel and a voice made for assemblies, stood up. Mr. Thornfield's family was here before any of us, she said. His vineyard is why this valley is special, not your copycat houses. You could see Karen's smile crack like cheap paint in August heat. She tabled the issue pending legal review, then whispered to a briefcase guy who billed by the nanosecond. Walking out, gravel crunching under my boots. I thought a chess match just started, and she opened with her queen. When lawyers can't win clean, bullies try to win loud. Karen launched a Facebook group called Concerned Neighbors of Redwood Ridge, the kind of page where commas go to die and rumors grow like mold. She posted angled photos to make my tractor look like a tank and my grape press like a biohazard. Anyone else notice more flies since certain operations expanded, she wrote. Pure fiction. But fear outruns facts like a scared rabbit. The shunning followed. Folks who used to wave now studied clouds. The hardware guy Bill stopped talking baseball. At First Valley Bank, Janet, who'd loved my granddad, suddenly needed additional documentation for a routine equipment loan, staring at her screen like it was showing my credit obituary. That night, I did what lawyers do. I looked for motive. Public records revealed Preston owned more land than anyone realized. 3 developments finished, 2 in planning, and a shopping list of parcels marked potential acquisition. The math was ugly. Farmland sells for $8,000 an acre, get it rezoned. And boom, $50,000. My 40 acres became a piggy bank with my name on it. Classic play I'd seen from California to Connecticut, weaponize the HOA. Bury the farmer in letters. Squeeze until the land changes hands. I called Jake Morris in law school, buddy turned environmental bulldog. Marcus, he said. Sounds like somebody poked a sleeping bear. Barrel thumped his tail like he understood. Next move, hire a surveyor and order a title search that reached back to when the valley was more cows than cul-de-sacs. 3 days later, the surveyor grinned like a magician. Your property extends about 50 feet farther east than you think, right into the back edges of 3 HOA yards. My grandfather had granted construction easements, not ownership. Old farm rule, never sell dirt, just lend the surface. Better yet, we found a utility easement running clear across the subdivision. Roads, power, water, legal arteries nobody can block. My wine tasted sweeter that night. Karen, sensing the ground tilt, hosted a safety meeting. She waved petitions that looked copy-pasted by a 5th grader, same handwriting, same punctuation crimes. She claimed my vineyard invited drunk drivers and wildfires. I sat in the back, smelling stale coffee and municipal panic, and realized she wasn't strategic anymore. She was scared. Then came a thick envelope from Whitfield and Howe. Preston's favorite hired sorts. Cease. Desist. Stop all commercial activity in 72 hours, or face lawsuits for public nuisance. Traffic violations. Improper use in a residential zone. And my favorite noise, grapes, apparently, are too loud. Problem: my post-divorce budget couldn't bankroll a court brawl. Solution: fight smart. I drove to the county courthouse with gas station coffee and a stubborn streak, and went spelunking in records older than disco. Ethel, a clerk who's been there since the Nixon years, watched me wade through misfiled folders. "What are you hunting, honey?" she asked, peering over bifocals. "A heritage designation," I said. She disappeared and returned with a battered folder labeled like it had survived a flood. Inside, an official 1987 Historic Agricultural District designation for Redwood Ridge teeth and all. Any development within 2 miles of heritage vineyards required state environmental impact studies. Not suggestions. Requirements. I cross-checked Preston's permits. 0 studies. 0 compliance. 0 legal authority. I sat in that basement, breathing dust and laughing like a crazy person. It wasn't sloppy paperwork, it was a system. Every sale in Preston's newest phase rested on permits as real as unicorns. We weren't talking a cranky neighbor anymore. We were looking at wire fraud, mail fraud, environmental violations, the works. I called Jake. He whistled. "Buddy, that's a RICO starter kit." While we stacked evidence, the harassment turned from petty to criminal. Someone sliced my main irrigation line surgical. At peak heat. Thousands of gallons gone. Anonymous calls hit my wedding clients. We heard there was chemical contamination. Lie. 3 couples canceled. Online. Fake reviews sprouted like mushrooms. Wine tasted like vinegar. Bride's family sued. They didn't. One even claimed the band got food poisoning and we don't even cater. Jake filed for a restraining order. And we got it 18 pages telling HOA reps to knock it off or meet a judge. Dr. Sarah Bennett, a soil scientist from the state university, agreed to assess Preston's projects. She spread satellite images and soil cores on my kitchen table. "What they did here," she said, tapping a map, "would take a decade to repair. Groundwater contamination, erosion from bad grading, wildlife corridors shredded like old maps." Meanwhile, 3 HOA board members resigned for ethical reasons. Translation: Karen's train was headed for a cliff, and they wanted off. Public records showed Preston overleveraged millions in construction loans hanging by a 90-day thread. Desperate people do stupid things. Dead fish appeared at my gate. Threat letters arrived with letters cut from magazines like a B-movie. False police reports triggered wellness checks during harvest. Barrels' hackles were up for a month straight. But everything went into a log. With timestamps and camera clips. Jake's contact at the bureau had a folder labeled Redwood Ridge before the week was out. Community lines hardened. Farmers formed a quiet alliance in my barn. Father Miguel from St. Agnes, hands like weathered leather, poured coffee and said, "Brother, land is a covenant. We'll stand with you." He started weaving false prophets who build on sand into Sunday homilies. The congregation knew who he meant. Ethel became our secret weapon calling whenever Preston or Karen sniffed around the courthouse. "Honey," she'd whisper. They just pulled deeds for 3 more farms. You might want to knock on some doors. We did. 2 families had already sold under duress. 2 more were on the ropes. That's when Preston himself rolled up. Fog still heavy in the rows. Marcus, he said, smile glued on. I've got a proposition that solves everybody's problems. $4 million cash. 48 hours to close. This is generous, he said, sweat dotting his perfect hairline. I let a long, slow silence stretch. Preston, I wouldn't sell you this land if you offered $10 million and your firstborn. His eyes flashed. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Farm boy. Here's the part I hadn't mentioned. Inspector Rodriguez, FBI Rodriguez. I'd been wearing a mic for weeks. Every threat, every bribe, every farm boy. Karen, meanwhile, detonated online. She accused me of tax evasion. Nope. Claimed the IRS was coming tomorrow. They weren't. And suggested my wine had dangerous chemicals. She posted 20 times a day. Even her fans got whiplash. People started quietly muting her, like turning down a smoke alarm that won't quit. The state attorney general opened an investigation. The bureau interviewed me as a witness in a multi-state developer scheme. You could feel the air change. Preston's job site stalled. Suppliers wanted cash up front. The bank froze, draws pending review. Karen called a community forum, and 6 people came. 1, only because he wanted free cookies. Jake proposed mediation neutral ground at the town hall. We go in nice, he said. Eyes bright. We come out with sunlight. The town hall was standing room only, news vans outside. Mic cables inside. That hum of a room waiting for a fight. Mediator Judge Patricia Wells banged the gavel and asked for civility. Good luck with that. Karen led with Broadway flair. Ladies and gentlemen, this man's illegal agricultural activities are destroying our property values. She held up a petition that would have flunked a handwriting class. She invoked harmony, safety, and standards like magic words. Preston followed. Summer camp counselor, voice on. I'm prepared to offer Mr. Thornfield a settlement reflecting fair value, he said. Sometimes compromise serves the greater good. I stood up with a folder thick enough to stop a door. I'd like to share what I learned while pruning vines and reading a few hundred pages of the law. I walked them through the original land grant 1889 language that still had teeth. The 1962 deed with perpetual farming rights. The 1987 Heritage District requiring environmental studies for any development within 2 miles. The survey showing HOA yards parked on my easement. The financials pointing to shell contractors and HOA funds paying consultants. Dr. Bennett's soil analysis. Father Miguel's affidavits from displaced pickers. Ethel's record trail. Then I mentioned the state attorney general's open file. Then the bureaus. Then I looked toward the back of the room. I believe there are federal agents here tonight with documents to serve. Agent Rodriguez stood. Badge, bright as noon sun. With 2 marshals beside him. The room inhaled on one breath. Karen's voice cracked. This is a setup. He's lying. He. Click. The sound of handcuffs echoed like a bell. Preston mumbled about rights and counsel while cameras flashed. Karen went crimson. Then chalk. Then quiet. For once. 6 months later. In a courtroom as solemn as a church. I watched Preston get sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. The judge called his scheme a systematic exploitation of agricultural families, the worst kind of American greed. Karen took 6 months in minimum security and lost just about everything. House. Title. That white SUV. Last I heard. She sells insurance 2 counties over. Smile cracked. Voice small. The HOA dissolved. Turns out people don't love paying dues to a board run by a felon. Redwood Ridge got a formal heritage designation, with real teeth. No more cookie-cutter sprawl, chewing up vineyards. The condemned McMansions came down by court order. Bulldozers clawed back illegal streets. And the soil-scarred but stubborn exhaled. A wildlife corridor reopened. Coyotes sang at dusk again. You could feel the land remember itself. We took settlement funds and started the Redwood Ridge Heritage Foundation. Scholarships for ag kids. Farm tours, where 4th graders learn tomatoes don't grow on shelves. Community gardens, where veterans dig and heal. Shared equipment co-ops, so small farms can fight big machines. It ain't charity. It's neighbors being neighbors. Business bananas. Media coverage turned our labels into bestsellers. Wedding bookings stretched 2 years out. People want to say I do where the little guy didn't fold. Sarah, the scientist, with mud on her boots and a mind like a scalpel never left. She moved into the farmhouse. Brought a quiet laugh that fills rooms. And a lab kit that lives on my kitchen table. Barrel got a companion, a rescue mutt we named Justice. Mostly because it made us smile to call justice here. Boy, across the vines. Our barn meetings became the Valley Farmers Alliance. We share legal templates. Swap marketing tricks. And line up tractors when a neighbor needs a hand. Father Miguel's Sunday crowd spills into the parking lot. He preaches stewardship like it's gospel, which, I mean, it kinda is. Ethel's writing a book, filing cabinets and felons. I pre-ordered 10 copies. Calls started coming from Oregon, Texas, Vermont, voices shaking, then steadying. As I explained deeds, easements, heritage protections, and how to document harassment without, losing your mind. Don't be a lone tree. I tell them, grow a grove. One evening, with the valley washed in gold, Sarah slid a stack of printouts across the table. There's a pattern. Marcus, a network of developers using the same playbook, weaponize HOAs, falsify studies, pressure families, flip land. We sent our files to the Bureau. The map of red pins they showed me later, let's just say it wasn't small. So, yeah, maybe this all started with a fence, but it became a line in the dirt between people who treat land like a slot machine and people who treat it like a promise. I still get up before the sun. Still cut my hands on wire and smile at the sting. Some mornings, I stumble over words. There's people who'd laugh at that. I know, but I look at the rows. The dogs racing. Sarah squinting at a soil core. And I think losing the old life was the price of getting my real one back. If you're staring down a HOA that thinks it can tell your tomatoes how to grow, here's my 2 cents. Slow. Steady. Documented. Learn your deeds. Learn your rights. Build community like a wall of intertwined roots. And when the bullies come smiling with clipboards, you keep your coffee hot and your records hotter. What would you do if your HOA tried to shut down your life's work? Would you fight? Would you sell? Anyone else had a HOA pull this mess on you? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, and if this made you mad, or gave you hope. Say so. 'Cause when good people fight back with facts, law, and neighbors at their side, the bullies always lose.